For me, one of the most frustrating things this election cycle is the Democrats' rightward pivot on the issue of immigration. And that's not exactly anything new. For the past almost 4 years, despite what MAGA wants to tell you, the Biden administration has been pretty draconian on the issue of immigration. Biden has kept in place Title 42, a Trump-era policy that grants the president power to mass deport immigrants without the usual court process they would normally go through. And from Politico, during just his first 2 years in office, Biden used it meaning Title 42, to kick out over 2.8 million immigrants. That's a stunning number. In Trump's entire time in the White House, his administration removed only 2 million people in total. So it's always so laughable when you hear Republicans say Democrats want to open the border and let every immigrant in, when in reality much of the Dem establishment isn't really all that different on the issue of immigration. And this isn't me trying to use this as a slam dunk against Republicans and saying, see, the Democrats can be just as harsh as you on immigrants, because I actually fucking hate this. I hate that Democrats have conceded this issue and have essentially said, you know what, we stand in solidarity with the Republicans on this issue. And this has poisoned the well so much with the electorate in this country, like for example, the prominent myth that immigrants bring in a wave of crime. An Oxford study found that undocumented immigrants are 33% less likely to be incarcerated than those natively born in this country. If you live in a major city with a high population of immigrants, you are still more likely to be the victim of a violent crime at the hands of someone who was actually born in this country than you are at the hands of an immigrant. And it's so fucking frustrating to see so many Democrats, my family included, fall for these bullshit talking points you would normally expect from Trump and the Republican Party. My mother is your average milquetoast lib, but she is also very susceptible to whatever she reads in the news. Like, for example, she loves reading the New York Post. That publication is right-wing tabloid garbage owned by Murdoch. I even tell her this, but she never listens. She likely only reads the New York Post because it has New York in its name. We're both New Yorkers. So she just intakes whatever she reads on New York Post about a supposed migrant crime wave, and then she sees Democrat politicians regurgitate what she reads on New York Post, and then she figures, well, there has to be some validity to this if even the Democrats are putting their foot down on immigrants. And then she starts talking about how we need to close the border, we can't allow any more people into this country because all they bring is crime and drugs. And then I'm thinking, she's the daughter of two immigrants from Ecuador who came to this country because they wanted more opportunities than what was presented to them in their home country. Isn't that the American dream in a nutshell? This country providing better opportunities to foreigners than what their home countries are able to provide them? Think about it logically. Do you really think the millions of immigrants that come into this country, every single one of them, have the explicit intent to commit crime? Many immigrants simply want better opportunities, either for themselves and or any family they may have. Are there some immigrants, and on top of that, undocumented immigrants that commit crime? Of course. Just like there are some people within every other fucking demographic of people that commit crime. Like, what is the demographic of people who primarily commit mass shootings? White dudes. Whenever a white dude commits a mass shooting, the response is almost always thoughts and prayers, mental health, not guns. There is never any discussion about the shooter's skin color, ethnicity, identity, etc. Not that I'm saying there should be, because those factors have absolutely nothing to do with the horrendous crime they committed. And then the Uvalde shooting happened, which was committed by a Latino, and even though the scumfuck was native to this country, you immediately had people who were like, huh, did he cross the border illegally? And that's putting aside the even more preposterous conspiracy theories that the shooter was trans. But anyway, this is bigotry that's par for the course for the Republican Party. And now we're seeing increased tension towards immigrants from Democrats, and it's so fucking frustrating. And we had the border bill from earlier this year that was initially bipartisan, that would have made it more difficult for immigrants to attain asylum status. Like, for example, it would have required asylum seekers to provide more extensive documentation, which would have been kind of fucking hard if they were in a situation where they had to leave their country in a hurry, or they may not have even had easy access to such documentation in the first place. But Trump pretty much killed this bill and told Republicans not to vote in favor of it because immigration has obviously been one of the biggest issues his 2024 campaign has been running on. Had the bill passed, one of the biggest issues he's been running on would be gone just like that because the quote-unquote problem would have been solved. But I think that shines a spotlight on how manufactured this migrant hysteria has been. Both parties are well aware that there is a high amount of irrational fear and bigotry surrounding non-white people people entering this country. The Republican Party has tapped into this fear for a very long time at this point, and now the Democrats are throwing their hands up and are like, you know what, let's be bigoted too because it might garner us some votes. Back during the Trump administration, the Democrats were all about welcoming immigrants in and were against the demonization of immigrants, not because they genuinely cared, but because it was politically expedient at the time. But now that we've had almost a full 4 years of Biden being just as much of a tyrant on the border as Trump was, the Democratic Party dropped these people like a toy they don't care about anymore, and much of the electorate has done exactly the same thing. Kamala promises to be tough on the border and tough on immigration, and this does bring about some concern within me. Obviously, I would still prefer a Kamala victory over a Trump victory, and Trump is absolutely worse on the issue of immigration, obviously. Trump promises to deport, like, what, 20 million fucking people, which would obviously be a logistical and economic nightmare for this country, not to mention a very obvious human rights violation. But I also fear the Democrats learning the wrong lesson from this election cycle should they win on Tuesday, and think, well, this rightward shift on immigration is clearly a winning strategy, let's continue to double down on this issue. I really wish they would instead hammer in on the economic growth this country has seen thanks to immigration. I've used this example before, but look at Springfield, Ohio, with all of the Haitian immigrants that have moved into that town. The town has seen economic revitalization thanks to the Haitian immigrants taking up jobs those native to that town can be fucked to do. And this got me thinking, if you really want immigrants gone, are you gonna take up the landscaping jobs they usually occupy, or any other physically intensive job immigrants usually take because people native to this country don't want to fucking do those jobs usually? The answer is likely no, and instead of demonizing immigrants for daring to want a better life for themselves or their family, how about you direct your anger towards this country instead? Take Venezuela, for example. We have seen more than 7 million migrants and refugees from that country because of the sanctions we have imposed on that country, and our dependence on Venezuelan oil has led to skyrocketed inflation in that country. Maybe if we didn't worsen the living conditions for foreigners in other countries, they would have less incentive to come over to this country. But this is a conversation that Republicans are certainly not ready to have at this point, and unfortunately many Democrats are not ready to have this conversation as well. Isn't the political climate in this country so fucking lovely? I want this election to end already, Jesus Christ. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Bye-bye. Oh, and happy Halloween. Have a spooky day. That was stupid.